Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you are having a good week, as good as you can have, with the things that have been going on. I want to start the program off by saying that my heart goes out to the victims and the families in Nashville this week. I don't always hear about these, sadly too common events. At least in time to get to say something about them on the show. But that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to acknowledge the people who are grieving and say that you are certainly in our thoughts this week if you happen to be out there listening or know someone who was affected by this event. It's the topic that has been the forefront of conversation this week, so I'm going to dive into this. But as I often do on this show, I'm going to try to come at it from a different angle and touch on something that kind of popped up the day after the event in Nashville. And it began to gain some traction on social media, alternative social media, I guess. I believe that it is tapered off very quickly, and thankfully, I might add, because it was a direction that we do not need to go in and go down, because I don't think it led anywhere. I don't believe that it was accurate, and I've seen some information. I've seen some very good videos put out by some individuals that pretty much close the door on this line of thinking or questioning. Thankfully. What I'm talking about, if you have not seen or heard about this, is the release of the video showing the Nashville shooter as she moved through the school. And in this video, you can see the clothing that she was wearing and the firearms that she was using. And shortly after that video was released, police also released body cam footage from the responding officers. And this footage concluded with the neutralizing of the threat that this shooter posed. I'll put it that way to be polite. And as an aside, I'm very often critical of police officers. I've been critical on this show before. I've been critical in a lot of comments that I've made in various platforms. I commend the officers in their response to this. They did exactly what was needed. They went into the building, they secured the building, they searched the building, they found the threat, and they neutralized the threat as quickly as they possibly could. So they deserve credit where credit is due. That being said, when that body cam footage came out, people looked at the body of the shooter and they compared it to the footage from the prior released security cam video, and they said, hey, wait a minute, the shoes don't match. In the video where she's walking around, she's got one type of shoe on, and in the video where she gets taken down, she's wearing another kind of shoe. And this is where things really kind of go off the rails. There was this flurry of posts on multiple social media sites about this supposed anomaly, and people began to pull up stills from the video and compare the types of shoes. It was suggested that she had these different shoes on in the two videos, and that therefore there had to be something nefarious going on with these videos, these films. Now, I want to address this today from a couple of different aspects, because this is very important for us as a movement, I guess. Those of us who find ourselves in the focus of government action, those of us who generally understand that the government perceives us to be the enemy and have focused their power on removing us from our everyday life through whatever means necessary. If that constitutes a movement, I use that term kind of loosely, but that's the way I see it. It's imperative that we maintain a very accurate sense of discernment as we navigate these kinds of narrative events. At least I believe it is. It's a priority that we maintain an ability to remain critical of the official narrative, but is more likely more critical that we maintain a degree of vigilance and skepticism of those who question the official narrative as well. I think that's a good way of putting it. Even people who are on our side may inadvertently be promoting information that is not only inaccurate, but being scattered out there into the landscape to confuse us and divide us as disinformation. We have to be very careful when we see things like this pop up and we are questioning the motives and narrative that accompany these types of national events. Have some caution, have some common sense and some rational and logical thought processes as you consume both the narrative and the counter narrative. In this case, I completely dismiss the idea that the shoes on the attacker are somehow different between the two videos. Now, I can understand why people think that they're different. I respect that you feel that, and I and others are wrong if you feel that we're wrong about these things. But the point I'm making still stands. There is no difference. What you are seeing is simply a product of poor camera resolution on the security cameras. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time going into that position, into that anomaly, or detailing an analysis or anything like that. I've made several posts on Gab that lay out the information as I see it, as well as others did, and that's all that I'm going to do there. I just don't feel the need to continue to spend more time on it. And the reason is that I fully believe that spending more time in debating this is exactly what the sources of disinformation want us to do. They want us to go around and around debating and arguing one another over these kind of minor details because it does a couple of things. It wastes our time, and frankly, it makes us angry with one another. It makes us break up otherwise good relationships, infighting over a belief about an event that had nothing to do with us. With all due respect to the families involved, when I say that, it didn't affect me at all, other than to make me reflect on, the unfortunate nature of the loss, how unfortunate it is for those families, and how thankful I am that no one that I know was involved. That's the only effect that it really had on me. So, because you do not have that personal attachment to this event, you can't get emotionally wrapped into a position or a theory about these things. You need to remain objective and detached from this as much as you can. When we entwine our emotional state or our emotional condition into a logical position, it no longer remains logical. It becomes something very often blind to logic. You need to maintain your objectivity with these things. Okay, it's just critical. When these events happen, you need to go into this with the understanding that without fail, you will hear initial bits of information that later prove to be inaccurate. And those inaccuracies may not be substantial. They may be just chalked up to the perception of the people involved and how they later relay that perception for those same reasons that the differences may be, significant, because, they may have seen something that they didn't think was a big deal, and they say it and relay it back to you, or they don't even mention it, and it turns out it was a big deal. So those kind of things can be double-edged swords there, but it may alter the entire situation. So when you hear information being reported, keep it in mind, but don't hold on to it tightly because it may be wrong. And I've seen this firsthand when I've worked some search and rescue operations. We have, gotten information in that you think is a clue, for lack of a better term. It's a bit of intelligence, and you begin to look into it and kind of follow down the path, and it turns out to just be completely wrong. It was a different direction than you needed to go, but you can't not look into it. But if you allow something like that to become a point that you attach to, you're going to preclude and exclude other bits of information that don't fit with a narrative you're building in your head. So it's just not the way to do things. And when a counter narrative emerges, you need to be willing and able to question it as well and put all of these things to a logical test. ask yourself at its most basic level, does this make sense? Ask the who, what, why, when, and how questions of all the stories. Everything should be questioned and subjected to the rigors of doubt, and no topic should be off limits. And I say that even though we know that there are some topics that if you question them, you can get thrown in jail or fined $1 billion in a lawsuit. Even those topics are not above reproach. Okay, everything should be questioned and investigated. So questioning things is good and it's healthy, and you just need to be able to identify and sift through the disinformation. And that's a hard thing to do, and you may get it wrong on some things. Okay, you may be wrong. That's okay. Maintaining kind of a high level approach and a higher level theory of the event will help you here. If you really want to get into an extensive review or investigation of an event, then write the information down and sort it out on a whiteboard. Put it on Post-it notes or something like that, and kind of move it around and sort through it. Set items that may not fit your theory of the event to the side, but don't necessarily reject them. Only reject the ones that are clearly false or inaccurate. And you're going to have those, but I would only get concerned if you had too many of those. You might be rejecting too many things. But at any rate, when these kind of events happen, I look at them with as objective an eye as possible. And I ask myself first and foremost this question, does this event contribute to the larger agenda of the elite? And if the answer is yes, then I will dig more into it and I'll go from there. But if the answer is no, then I'll often just kind of stand back and see, well, maybe if additional information comes out, that maybe it makes it an event that contributes to our agenda. And then you kind of go from there. But if I find that the event could potentially move the agenda, then I will watch for some key elements. And the two most important ones are, what does the official story highlight, and what does the official story hide? And what it hides can be just as important and can tell you if the event is something that they are reacting to, or if it may be something that they had a deeper involvement in or a deeper hand in, maybe just foreknowledge of. It's my opinion that this event that happened this week is something, it's somewhat of a gamble for the agenda. It's a gamble because the larger LGBTQ community may take this as a rally cry and go very much off script and do something even more radical, okay? There are unknown elements that the agenda does not control, and those elements may appear and cause setbacks for them. So it is a risk, and to make this a focal point for more political capital, and the other aspect is that this event may serve as an example to further our agenda, and that's not something the elite wants at all. So they have to play this very, very carefully. But regardless how this goes going forward, at this point, I don't see anything that causes me to doubt the official narrative, at least at a high level, to the extent that we know who this person is and we know what they did. We still need to answer why they did it and how they did it. And there's plenty of room for speculation and nefarious actions on the part of the others, or a part of others, in those two questions. We still need to see these clues or this information that the shooter spoke of in their text messages and chat board messages, where they said they had left enough information out there to make it obvious why they were doing things. There's a report that there's a manifesto, if you will, that is out there. So we still need to see that. I think the entire shoe thing, though, is chaff. It's disinformation that is designed to mislead and divert attention. And that's how these things work. And let me explain that via an analogy with the word chaff. I'm not using that word in its definition that's associated with wheat or crops or anything like that. I'm using it in its definition that's related to radar. I use this analogy on Gab, but I want to repeat it here because it's important to the wider topic. In air warfare, radar looks for enemy aircraft, okay? And they could be search radars, or they could be radars on anti-aircraft missiles themselves. But either way, they're looking for enemy aircraft so that they can target them. But the aircraft are not defenseless. They have several ways to defeat these missile radars and tracking radars. They can have technology that makes them appear to be much smaller than they are on the radar, so that the radar system thinks that they're, birds or ground clutter or static or something like that, and it ignores them. They could jam the radars, and this involves sending out signals of your own just in massive levels that just cover the whole radar system and cause it to just see static. Okay, it just confuses it. And the other defense, or one of the other defenses, is chaff. Chaff is small strips of metal that reflect the radar and cause it to, it's kind of a cloud effect. It looks like a cloud on the radar system. It's like a smoke screen, and it hides the aircraft inside of this cloud. And the radar thinks the aircraft is there, but it can't tell exactly where it is. And it allows the aircraft to, ideally for them, slip away or change directions and move, and the radar not see them. And there's some other things like decoys and such, but I kind of hope you get the picture there. Now, this is just an analogy, but it's very apt because not just the chaff, but the jamming is used in information warfare as well. Just, flood the media with so much information that you can't pick out the real target because of all the static. That would be like jamming. Decoys are used as well. It's all very similar here. To be good at this, you need to be able to punch through that jamming and sort out that chaff. And don't follow those decoys, because when you are looking at the decoys, the real one will be slipping in from some other direction, looking like little birds or something that doesn't matter. Anyway, it's important that you develop this skill. We develop this skill. And that's why I put some focus and energy on this. Someone asked me on Gab, why I felt like I needed to change people's minds about this specific event, about this shoe thing. That's a good question. It's a fair question. But that's the reason. I want people to be able to not get distracted and chase the decoys or get caught up in the chaff. I want us to be right. I want us to not be an easy mark, and I want to make the bad guys work their asses off trying to psyop us. We need to be making their lives harder and their jobs far more difficult than we do. I've seen it time and time again where we fall into lines of inquiry, lines of questioning that are just false, and they lead to nowhere. Or maybe they've got just enough truth to make us think that they're real and accurate and something productive, but it's really not. It's just frustrating to see that over and over again and ask ourselves, why we never learn from these kind of things. Well, we don't learn because no one bothers to try and tackle these things as soon as they pop up. And also no one bothers to follow up and openly and loudly debunk them and shut down the nonsense when later evidence clearly points to the fact that a previously held idea is 100% wrong and was a dead end the whole time. And there are a lot of those. There's far too many to go into. There's enough that somebody could do entire series of videos on them. And the sad thing is even if you were to do that, there would still be people so emotionally bound to their theory of an event that they would reject the information that's staring them right in the face and chalk that up or call that disinformation. They would literally devour the disinformation and reject the truth. It's just the nature of humanity. So there's only so much we can do. There's only so much time in the day, really, to do these things. Now, my opinion about many events over the years has altered as new information came to light. My thoughts and ideas about Waco and Oklahoma City and TWA 800 and the first World Trade Center and 9/11 and all these things have been something at the beginning that altered over the course of time as more information came out. Don't I'm not going to go into all of those, but just putting that out there. I don't get myself married to a particular theory of the case, if you will, to kind of put that into criminal investigation terms. I try to stay above it and open-minded about it to not allow myself to be, caught in and deceived by things. I'm trying to do my part. I want you to be able to do your part too. Something that is helpful is to go back and watch or read old information on events and then compare it to new information and reevaluate the old things in the light of the new things. And also something that's very helpful is to walk away from a thing for a while. I will get really focused on a topic and I'll read 5 or 6 books, or I might watch a dozen videos or something like that, documentaries. And that can blind you to something obvious, and you would miss it if you're not careful. So step away and then come back at a later time and kind of summarize and reevaluate things again. It's just very, very helpful when you're troubleshooting or looking at things in general. But it's very particularly helpful when you're going through these kind of events. Also, to have these kind of discussions with other people that might have also been looking into these kinds of things. Bounce your ideas off of them and evaluate their information as you evaluate yours. Anyway, I hope this was helpful to you and you understand my perspective here on these things. Like I said, we've got to do better at this because we are living right now deeply immersed in an information war, and we are all on the battlefield. There is no safe haven because even if you do not participate, the events continue to go on around you. Now that's all I have time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.